Call on the member for Georgetown South to say prayers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning to everyone. Let us pray. Almighty God, from whom all wisdom and power are derived, we beseech thee so to direct and prosper the deliberations of the Parliament now assembled, that all things may be ordered upon the best and surest foundations, for the glory of thy name and for the safety, honour, and welfare of the people of these islands. Bless our Sovereign Lady, Queen Elizabeth II, Charles, Prince of Wales, and all the royal family. Give grace to all who exercise authority in our Commonwealth, that peace and happiness, truth and justice, religion and piety may be established among us. Especially, we pray for the Governor of our islands, the Premier, the Speaker of the Parliament, the Leader of the Opposition, Ministers of the Cabinet, ex officio members, members of the Parliament, the Chief Justice, and members of the judiciary, that we may be enabled faithfully to perform the responsible duties of our high office. All this we ask for thy great name's sake. Let us all say the Lord's Prayer together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. The Lord bless us and keep us. The Lord make his face shine upon us and be gracious unto us. The Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon us and give us peace now and always. Amen.
Please be seated. Proceedings of this Honourable Parliament are now resumed.
Administration of oaths or affirmations.
None.
Reading by the Honourable Speaker of messages and announcements.
None.
Presentation of petitions.
None.
Presentation of papers and of reports.
None.
Questions to Honourable Ministers and members of the Cabinet.
None.
Statements by Honourable Ministers and members of the Cabinet.
I've been notified of the Premier's statement. Honourable Premier. Sarge.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, 11 years ago, 11 years ago, Mr. Speaker, an innocent child asked her parents what seemed a simple, curious, yet curious question. A question that brought a new tradition to the Cayman Islands. Her query to her parents was, did the Cayman Islands have a specific day to give thanks for our many blessings? At the time, she attended an American-based school and was taught about United States Thanksgiving held each November. So her question was simple: why not Cayman? The answer her father gave her was, no, we didn't. So then the question became, why not? She kept asking so much that her parents eventually put together or made some arrangements, gathered local food, and on a Sunday, had a meal along with extended family, complete with stories of Cayman of old and music in the background. The discussion, Mr. Speaker, turned to the idea of creating a real Cayman Thanksgiving, which included the promotion of our culture and heritage. From 2010, we have celebrated Cayman Thanksgiving on the first Sunday after the end of each November, because 30th November is the official close of the Atlantic hurricane season. I'm happy to have been a part of the government that in 2014 officially recognized the first Sunday in December as our annual Cayman Thanksgiving. The day is meant for a traditional Caymanian meal surrounded by family and friends. Mr. Speaker, we've been blessed beyond measure in the Cayman Islands this year. We've had no major hurricanes, and while Tropical Storm Grace left behind much damage to our crops, our lives were spared. And yes, there was some damage to roofs, some leaking roofs. But our lives were spared, Mr. Speaker. And to show our thankfulness for a calm hurricane season, may I suggest that people donate their hurricane stocks of food and first aid supplies to someone who needs them, or put them in Christmas collection bins, or donate them to a food bank. The United Kingdom government has blessed us, Mr. Speaker, with free vaccines and test kits for COVID this year. You've heard me say it many times. If you have not been vaccinated and are able, please take the shot. And if it is time for you to get your booster, go get it. And Mr. Speaker, that booster qualification is being changed, or has been changed now, effective as of, I think, next week. All adults over 18 who have had the full 2 doses for more than 3 months can get the booster shot. Mr. Speaker, we have been blessed by caring and diligent healthcare workers who have helped guide us through the COVID pandemic. To all of them, I personally say thank you, and I know my government, and I'm sure all members of this Honorable House join in saying thank you. Each of us can give thanks that we woke up to celebrate another glorious day in these beautiful islands. Whether you worship the Lord on Saturday or Sunday, this weekend is a time for congregations to offer thanks and count your many blessings. And it is a good time to teach people from other countries about our traditions, our culture, and our heritage. I urge everyone this weekend to take a minute or two and look around you, your home, your yard, the beach, the sea, your family, and just give thanks. Saying thank you is the simplest form of expressing gratitude, and the attitude of gratitude is what keeps us happy. When you express your thankfulness to others, it can make both of you feel better. It provides peace of mind and inner happiness. As I close, Mr. Speaker, I will leave everyone with a quote from Roman statesman Cicero. A thankful heart is not only the greatest virtue, but the parent of all the other virtues. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of government, myself, my family, I wish everyone a happy Cayman Thanksgiving. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also wish to bring a message in relation to International Day of Persons with Disabilities. Mr. Speaker, today is International Day of Persons with Disabilities and marks the United Nations observance to promote an understanding of and appreciation for disability issues. The goal of this day, Mr. Speaker, is to also raise awareness that will spark changes that will support the dignity, rights, and well-being of all persons with disabilities. By United Nations estimates, today the world population is over 7 billion people, and more than 1 billion, or about 15%, live with some form of disability, with 80% of those living in developing countries. Here in the Cayman Islands, Mr. Speaker, the observance of this day is important because it serves as a reminder that we need to continuously strive to increase the integration of persons with disabilities in every aspect of our political, social, economic, and cultural ties. Mr. Speaker, raising the level of awareness about disability issues is not just about one day of observance, but it is about thinking long-term and understanding that disability inclusion is vital to achieving the global sustainable development goals. Whether it's through education, physical and mental health care, building design requirements, the services and programs offered to adults with special needs at Sunrise Center for the past 35 years, or creating legislation and policy, the government, along with many NGOs or non-governmental organizations, has been actively involved in improving the lives of persons with disabilities in the Cayman Islands for many years. And the PAC government, Mr. Speaker, is committed to continuing those efforts. And if you'll allow me to digress for a few seconds, I would make mention of the great job done by the Minister, Minister Ebanks, yesterday in his contributions to the budget discussions, where he outlined very clearly the intentions of this government in relation to the Sunrise Center and doing something which serves the interests of not only those people that are utilizing that center, Mr. Speaker, but for the whole country, and bringing about a much better result at the end of the day. But, Mr. Speaker, there is much more work to be done. as there are myriad ways in which we can improve our efforts to make the lives of persons with disabilities better. On this International Day of Persons with Disabilities, I ask us all to recommit to building an inclusive and just future for everyone who has a disability so that no one is left behind. The 2021 theme for this day is leadership and participation of persons with disabilities toward an inclusive, accessible, and sustainable post-COVID-19 world, which I think aptly reflects the climate of the ever-evolving pandemic. Mr. Speaker, the Cayman Islands National Council for Persons with Disabilities supports this theme and understands how difficult navigating through the new normal of COVID-19 has been, in particular for persons with disabilities. Mr. Speaker, recently the Council decided that one of its areas of focus will be how to more effectively and inclusively communicate with persons with disabilities living in a pandemic environment. Since March 2020, wearing a mask in public places and private settings has become the norm. While proper mask wearing is an effective public health measure to decrease the spread of the virus that causes COVID-19, it also serves, Mr. Speaker, as a communication barrier for those with hearing impairments and older persons whose hearing is diminished because of age. Mr. Speaker, the chair of the National Council, Ms. Magda Embry, said, and I'm quoting, "The Council is advocating for the use and availability of clear masks in businesses, health services, and educational institutions. We ask all businesses, institutions, or organizations that interact with the public to consider designating at least one frontline person to wear a clear mask to assist those customers or clients who have difficulty communicating. Alternatively, having clear masks available for staff to use when the situation arises would be immensely helpful to those in the community who have hearing impairments and are struggling to stay safe, but still need people to be able to communicate effectively with them." She further explained that the Council can be contacted for recommendations on types of disposable and reusable clear masks that members have found to work well, and encouraged businesses to sell clear masks in an effort to help to support persons with disabilities. Mr. Speaker, she concluded by saying, "The power of receiving clear communications to persons with disabilities and a reassuring smile in many cases cannot be underestimated. The Council looks forward to seeing more persons wearing clear masks in the Cayman Islands in an effort to become more inclusive and sensitive to the needs of persons with disabilities during the pandemic." Mr. Speaker, I commend the Chair and members of the Cayman Islands National Council for Persons with Disabilities and all the hard work that they do to advocate that our people and citizens with disabilities are treated fairly and with respect. I'm proud to say that it was during my tenure as a minister with the 2013 to 2014 government that the Solomon Webster Disability Act was adopted in 2016, and the Cayman Islands Disability Policy 2014 to 2033 was put in place. The Council serves an important role in relation to these two instruments, given that they advise the public and private sector on disability issues, and they are the principal watchdog entity for monitoring the government's implementation efforts of the policy. Mr. Speaker, I encourage members of this Honourable House and the public to learn more about the Council and the work it does. You can follow them on Facebook at facebook.com/Council Disability Council Cayman / or contact them through email at disabilitycouncil@gov.ky. Mr. Speaker, I will leave us with the words of Margaret Mead. If we are to achieve a richer culture, we must weave one in which each diverse human gift will find a fitting place. Mr. Speaker, I believe that would be fitting advice for the Cayman Islands, and it would certainly make the Cayman Islands a wonderful, fitting place to have that implemented. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would also add that at times we may wear yellow ties to indicate the perspectives of certain members of the government, and we all share our support for each other. But today, Mr. Speaker, the wearing of the yellow tie is not political at all. Today, it is to show support for the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, because this yellow is the color that has been recommended to be adopted to show such respect and observance, sir. Thank you.
Personal explanations,
None.
obituary and other ceremonial speeches,
None.
raising of matter of privileges,
None.
government business, bills, second reading, continuation of debate, appropriation financial years 2022, 2023, Bill 2021.
Continuation of debate on the budget. Does any other member wish to speak? The Minister of Home Affairs.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker, colleagues. Fellow members of the PAC government, members of the opposition, and the listening public, I rise to deliver my budget address on the 2022-2023 financial year for the two ministries which I am fortunate to be responsible for, namely Home Affairs, which consists of 911, Fire Department, Prison Services, Cadet Corps, the Regiment, and Community Rehabilitation, and the Ministry of Youth, Sports, Culture, and Heritage. This budget represents the first two-year budget of this government and also my first budget as a minister, and it is with much pride that I'm a part of this process. Before I continue, Mr. Speaker, it would be remiss of me not to acknowledge and extend my gratitude and appreciation to my chief officers, Ms. Teresa Echeniki and Mr. Michael E. Banks, and their deputies, the whole ministerial team, and all the people who I've been blessed to have to work with. Their dedication and their passion, I have found in many cases, are equal to mine. I really appreciate their support and their guidance. I will start with youth, sports, culture, and heritage. With that said, Mr. Speaker, I first wish to bring to your attention the subject of youth, sports, culture, and heritage. For the benefit of the listening public, I would like to highlight that there are two government departments and 3 statutory authorities and government companies, SAGCs, that fall under the ambit of the Ministry of Youth, Sports, Culture, and Heritage, which include the Department of Sports, Youth Services Unit, National Gallery of the Cayman Islands, the Cayman Islands National Cultural Foundation, and the Cayman Islands National Museum. These subject areas are very unique and important to our beautiful Cayman Islands, and it is therefore imperative for our past, our present, and our future that we do not ignore or minimize these subject areas, but rather that we embrace and uphold our ministry's vision of an enriched community and a proud nation. Despite the fiscal restraints we face as a government, Mr. Speaker, my ministry is determined to advocate for and ensure we meet my 3 priorities, which are talent identification and development, enhancing and empowering our youth, and awareness and preservation of culture and heritage. Mr. Speaker, a lot of people automatically felt that when they saw talent identification and development, that it would only be, that I was, of course, talking only of sports. Mr. Speaker, this is across all of my ministry. The amount of young, talented art, people who are in art, they're dabbling in culture, the talent is there. We intend to identify them. We intend to help grow them and help them grow. Mr. Speaker, we do realize that all of this work can be put in if the right base has not been set in place. Mr. Speaker, I do intend to sit closely with the Minister of Education to also sell her, which will not be a hard sell, being a former athlete herself, the importance of the schools being the base of so much of our programs, both in art and in sports, and also to strengthen our culture and our heritage through the schools. It has been neglected for too long, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, before getting here, I've said many years, I've said it for a long time, that Cayman is a graveyard for sports and arts. But I can speak. God has blessed me, and the people of West Bay North has blessed me, and the PAC government has blessed me by giving me this position. I will do my very best to bring them to the top and make them be as important as any other subject in this government. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Youth, Sports, Culture, and Heritage aims to achieve these goals through advocating for and further enhancing current and new programs, introducing new opportunities for our Caymanians, developing and revising policies, and 4, strengthening our subject areas through a collaborative and holistic approach with those in public and private sector where there are synergies. A key focus for the ministries, Mr. Speaker, will be we have already seen some amazing work from our entities and our Caymanian people, and I look forward to so much more as we move into this new calendar and budget year. Through the creativity and forward thinking of our entities, we have highlighted and brought attention and awareness to our local artists of all ages through exhibitions and heard stories of yesteryear. And Mr. Speaker, the amount of art work that I have seen in the last 6 months, the quality, the level of photographs, paintings, the level of clay, all those type of things, Mr. Speaker. The country, there's a lot of us that do not realize what we have in this country. And Mr. Speaker, we have to find ways to highlight these things. Just the past Saturday evening, in Elizabethan Square, Art Nest had an art evening. The amount of people that was there. And what impressed me, Mr. Speaker, this was something that was not in the National Gallery. This was not something at the museum. This is a private entity doing something out there. And as much as we talk about integration with the new Caymanians and the indigenous Caymanians, Mr. Speaker, I saw something happen that night that shows me the older members of the opposition will remember when the high school was everyone, just like myself and the Premier and the Deputy Governor, when we were there, everybody was there, regardless of what stage of life you were from in Grand Cayman. That parted, and now there's two Caymans, whether people want to admit it or not. And my ministry is making an effort, Mr. Speaker, as you will hear later on about the YES Conference. What is the YES Conference? It's the Youth Empowerment Symposium. The two young men that's working with us to organize this, one is a generational Caymanian, one is a new Caymanian, one comes from the CIS, Caymana Bay area, one comes from in town. Collaboration, two separate sectors. And once again, Mr. Speaker, I saw art. I saw art do something the other night in the Elizabethan Square. And I'm so proud to say that she's one of my constituents. There's a lady by the name Miss Kelly Renneking. She's a well-known artist. She had her booth. And then along comes two little young girls, Justine Jervis and Leah Grant, setting up their table. There's Miss Kelly helping them with light. And I sat there off watching it, and later on in the evening, to see Miss Kelly take a break and go over to two other young Caymanians that had a booth and look at their work, encourage them and talk to them. And I'm saying to myself, look at this. This is a new Caymanian. And she's there with these three young Cayman female entrepreneurs / artists. And she's there with them, helping them, talking to them. That is what the world of sports, arts, and these things can do to our culture. Mixing it and bringing us together. And we hope, through our ministry and the work that we intend to do, is to bring this country together as one. We have enjoyed the songs and music of our local musicians and folk singers, celebrated with our young athletes on their accomplishments, as well as supported and funded cultural, sporting, youth, and relevant educational programs and events. In addition, funding for overseas opportunities to young Caymanians in sporting, cultural, and youth-related pursuits, provisions of art classes for greater exposure to our children and teenagers, support to our aging population through tea and art, implementation of virtual programs to continue services and awareness have all been undertaken despite the restrictions resulting from COVID, just to name a few. And while I remember, Mr. Speaker, let me let the country know that in the last week, the first ever Junior Pan American Games. And what we have is we have 4 young people who have gone over there and they have done, we have quite a few people over there, but there are some young people who have did PRs, and those in sports know what a PR is a personal record. And to do it in a major competition is something that we must recognize. 2 in swimming and 1 in track and field, and they've all PR'd under competition with other children from the best around the world. Mr. Speaker, the talent is here. We just have to handle it right. Something that has gone on for years. We see talent come in and disappear. But God's willing, the next 3.5 years, Mr. Speaker, these young people will be hit with a new system. There's going to be a lot of gnashing of teeth and come home to Jesus meetings with associations. I don't mind being unpopular. They can complain to the public all they want, because if they don't do things the right way, Mr. Speaker, I have many ways. There's many ways to skin a cat. And Mr. Speaker, I can tell you, I know the rules do not allow me to interfere in an association, but I have facilities they need to use. Things are going to be done the right way, Mr. Speaker. The cronyism and all these other things that have gone on for years, and because you have us over here afraid to stand up to, not me, Mr. Speaker. I don't care if they talk bad about me. Despite the astonishing achievements from our entities to date, our ministry continues to strive for so much more, and the budget for the Ministry of Youth, Sports, Culture, and Heritage has been prepared with an emphasis on what we have identified, where we have identified gaps and areas for further development, and we have no intention of allowing restrictions as a result of the pandemic to impact our progress. We are going ahead full speed, Mr. Speaker. You was here one time. I remember having to speak in Jamaica at a conference, the restructuring of the infrastructure of our country for sports. I didn't even have to make notes. I just remembered what we did, the button of courts in every area and all those things, and I'm happy to say that in speaking to the opposition for what to include into the budget, we have identified in almost at every constituency will have their own, just like you've done in your area already. And we will have some park, or we will have some court in every area by the time this term finishes. And if there's one already there, they will be enhanced. With that said, I will now speak briefly on some of the specific focus areas and proposed capital projects for the 2022-2023 budget year. Some of the key initiatives in the 2022-2023 budget year are as follows. The review and implementation of the National Sports Policy and the National Youth Policy. And in that area, Mr. Speaker, I have set up a sports commission or a sports council of 8 or 9 independent people. And one of those we have been so fortunate and have been blessed to have sit on this council is none other than one of the greatest West Indians of all time, Michael Holding. And those are the caliber of people who are sitting there, people who have no bias to one sport, or people who have no bias to any area or whatever. It's about sports overall, the big picture, Mr. Speaker. And this is where we're going. And I would like to say, I would like to call out one person, the Acting Deputy Chief Officer Mrs. Melissa Worms, sharp as a tack. Minister, if you do this and you get these people to do this, this is what will happen, this is what could happen. You avoid, the young lady covers, she doesn't just dot an I and cross a T, Mr. Speaker. She goes back and she crosses I and she dots the T too. That's how she is. And she has, the advice she has given, Mr. Speaker, also allows that almost everything we do will be transparent and above board. Things like, how do you become a focus sport? How do you stay a focus sport? It's not just one person making decisions and then going and telling other people this or what, and the facts are not there. Everything will be there and be factual. The development of an action plan for the existing National Culture and Heritage Policy and Strategic Plan 2017 to 2026. The enhancement and implementation of services to support the older persons policy, where we can tie in cultural or heritage activities, as well as ensure our youth services unit and Department of Sports are players to this policy. The streamlining of grant processes for youth, sports, culture, and heritage to ensure value for dollar and benefits to our people. Enhancing and further support to various annual events such as National Heroes Day, Proud of Them Cayman, Pirates Week, Red Kayak Night, and lastly, the supporting advocacy of policies, delivery of programs, and implementation of projects that fall under the entities of which I am responsible. Mr. Speaker, the contracts are the thing that you have to deliver. I've gone through some of them. When the new purchase orders go out with the various associations that we assist, it will be a complete new purchase order, Mr. Speaker. They will have to, these associations in Grand Cayman, we're not just getting money just so anymore. Money's tight, hard to come by. We have people, we have to keep the health services going, and we have to make sure our education system continue to move toward the top. Mr. Speaker, these associations in the past that have bullied their members, bullied their teams, and done everything the way just because I have the, and setting up their elections that a church group can come in and visit that can't even find the stadium. Those type of days are over, Mr. Speaker. In these purchase orders, like I said, we cannot tell you how to run your association. We cannot tell you who to elect, but the association will be run right. It will be run by the constitutions that they present to us. Plain and simple, Mr. Speaker. It will be all above board and transparency. There's some associations that from the time Jesus was in Rivera Beach with short pants, they were doing these same things. And it's now 2021 and they're still doing it. Time. The fun is done. I use a phrase that the Deputy Premier used to like to use. The doll baby house is getting mashed up now. Mr. Speaker, this is just a glimpse of what the ministry will be continuing to do. But in addition, I want to mention new proposed projects that we are aiming to establish and implement for the upcoming budget year. As I've spoken before, the Youth Empowerment Symposium called YES has been proposed and the works are in play. It was supposed to happen, but with COVID going back up, because so much testing that we did, all of a sudden we found that COVID was here. But when things get back under control, Mr. Speaker, it will take place. And this symposium will not be what we usually do to young people. The symposium will not be in some little hall. It will be the same how we as big people can go to the hotels and have our conferences there. These young people are worth putting their conference in the big hotel as well, showing them that they are valued and they are just as important as anybody else in this country. A recognition program for our seniors who have reached the blessed age of 90 and above, called National Treasures. Establishing a youth committee to ensure that the voice and views of our upcoming future leaders are heard on all subjects and areas, including programming, legislation, and policy. There are very bright young people out there that know what they want, know what we need. They just need guidance and they need a voice. We will be giving them that voice, Mr. Speaker. Reintroducing district and family fairs to sustain the uniqueness of our culture and heritage from district to district. Collaborating with schools to refocus the detention programs to better re-engage students in positive and mindful practices, provide an opportunity to learn from role models in their community, redirect excessive and negative energies through exercise, mediation, or yoga and arts. And Mr. Speaker, it is so funny that this is in this, but just last week, the Chief Justice called some chief officers and the governor, and they had a meeting about the service clubs and various entities working with a lot of these young people who get expelled or get detention. And it falls right in line with this, ma'am. And when Chief Officer Mikey Banks came back and told me about it, I smiled. It's right here, Mr. Speaker. It's so funny that they didn't know what we were doing, but yet they were starting to discuss it. So the synergies are there, Mr. Speaker, and I'm happy to say that I know this is something that the next side of the House will be more than happy for. There will be no problems with these programs. Enhance the public awareness through various social media platforms to share and celebrate our culture and heritage. Highlight our youth and sporting initiatives. Celebrate our people and feature a comprehensive calendar of events related to our subject areas for sharing of information and activities to keep the public abreast of the many great initiatives happening throughout Grand Cayman, Cayman Brac, and Little Cayman. Mr. Speaker, in addition to what I've already mentioned, I want to specifically make reference to one of the PAC government's 10 broad policy outcomes. Broad outcome number 7, entitled Utilizing Sport to Enhance the Lives of Our People. While I am very passionate about all of the subjects in my portfolio, Mr. Speaker, I am sure members of this honorable House will be well aware that I have a lifelong love for sports. For this reason, Mr. Speaker, I want to speak more in depth on the government's plan for sports and its related impacts as stated in the 2022-2024 strategic policy statement. Anywhere we travel, Mr. Speaker, in the world, you will notice that sports have long been an arena that provides for the improvement of social capital, promotion of higher educational goals, increased employment opportunities, improved health and wellness, enrichment and fostering of inclusion, contributing to the breakdown of cultural differences, and significantly improving economic value to many communities. If we shift and hone our focus, we have the opportunity to enhance and turn sports into another area of economic benefits for the Cayman Islands. In addition to promoting sporting activities as an avenue of personal and social development for our young people, cultivating our traditional sporting and recreational activities and the overall health and well-being for our aging population and citizens on a whole. Mr. Speaker, to fully understand and grasp broad outcome number 7, we must understand the specific objectives and actions needed to achieve this broad outcome. The first objective is to promote the benefits of sports by encouraging a culture of fitness in the communities through public education campaigns. This will include the promotion of opportunities for academic advancement through sports and the development and enhancements of sports tourism. Mr. Speaker, we're going big down this road. There's so much stuff that we can do. We all know we put money in the budget for the 50-meter pool. Carifta swimming is something that is beneficial to tourism, more than a lot of other sports. Let's get that straight. The facts will show you that. Thanks to Frank Flowers Sr., when I was in charge of Pirates Week, we almost pulled off the world open water swim here with FINA. And just as we thought we had it, something happened on that side of the ocean. But Mr. Frank Flowers Sr. and myself, we're working. Everyone knows about the Flowers Sea Swim, but we're looking to bring the world open water swim here to the Cayman Islands. When it was inspected before, Cayman had the perfect record and the water and everything was perfect. If the weather is bad on the outside, we can go inside the North Sound. So everything is there for backup plans and so forth. Mr. Speaker, there's something that we may not know. We have a Caymanian by the name of Cameron Kirkernel, who is so good at spear fishing that he has gloves named after him. Mr. Speaker, World Spearfishing Competition. We have the 12-mile bank, and speaking to the Minister of Education, more than happy for me to take one leg of it to the Brac and one leg to Little Cayman, a 3-day event where people from all over the world would come in here for a spearfishing competition. Yes, we have our rules in place, but we can waive those for 1 day, 2 to 3 days. And it's not everybody that's doing it. This is serious competition. All that is simple. Mr. Speaker, this is where sports tourism comes in. When people go on the 12-mile bank, and you can go there, and what I see them do when I was educated by this, first by Dion Brandon, and then having met and then speaking to other people overseas about this event, or these type of events, these guys actually go overboard and spread blood. Something you're told not to do. That's the level of spear fishing, and it's something that's followed on big television. I was worried about the sharks too, Miss Julie, but that's what they do. Mr. Speaker, we also just finished doing an RFP on the World's Strongest Man competition. The World's Strongest Man competition, over 400 million viewers and viewed in over 69 countries on big television. Mr. Speaker, Cayman Brac, Little Cayman, Grand Cayman, once again, have it down at the public beach, one set of lifting the heavy stuff, one set at Pedro Castle, one set in Cayman Brac, one set in Little Cayman. You have different events in different places. Mr. Speaker, this is something that we don't have to pay, and these are all on ESPN, NBC, CBS. These are major things, Mr. Speaker. The RFP is being done, and hopefully we'll look at a MOU in the new year. The second objective is to raise the profile of sports in the Cayman Islands. We must establish a governance structure and improve standards through accountability by establishing a National Sports Council, which I'm already almost done, Mr. Speaker. The third objective, Mr. Speaker, speaks to facilitating healthy competition to improve performance. This can be achieved by a common level 1, level by supporting more competitions in school and inter-island, promoting gender equality in sports, encouraging Caymanian and non-Caymanian integration, increasing regional competition engagement, and establishing district-level programs for our seniors and juniors. Mr. Speaker, just what I was talking about, each constituency having some little court. Because if West Bay North says we got to take 12 older people, 55 to 60, or 55 and above, and we're going to go up to Georgetown South, and we're going to have a little competition one day. And then we just continue to have this is what breeds. And for the younger ones, Mr. Speaker, competition is how people improve. That's why you continue to play here. You don't improve. You have to go and play against people who are better. The fourth objective, Mr. Speaker, is to support growth through funding. This will be difficult, but we will find a way. And I now have public partners that are willing to work with me. We will provide funding for holistic, which includes physical, emotional, social, sports development, and funding to augment sports scholarships, which have already started and will continue to do. At a policy level, we will mandate that all sporting organizations seeking funds from government have vibrant and established youth programs to allow for development and exposure to the local, regional, and international levels. Like again I said, we will insist on the associations being transparent in everything they do. Infrastructure development is an integral aspect of elevating sports at a national level and further harnessing sports tourism opportunities. Therefore, our fifth and last objective focus on enhancing these existing facilities for optimum results, which I'll expand on as I move on to speak on my ministry's capital projects. I understand that this is no small task for a rather small ministry, Mr. Speaker, and especially in a time of a tight budget. However, if you know me and the amazing team that I have supporting me, then you will know that we will achieve this and more for the people to the Cayman Islands. We will not give up, Mr. Speaker. We will get it done. Another thing that will be done through our ministry, you have our sporting organizations who are going to bid for world conferences, regional conferences to be held here in the Cayman Islands, Mr. Speaker. Because a lot of times when you have these conferences, the international body assists you. And it doesn't have to necessarily cost us very much, but getting the people in here, making them see the place, and there's a return rate to this island that's pretty good. Our tourism product is one of the best in the world. Mr. Speaker, finally, as it relates to capital funding, over $2.25 million have been requested in 2022, and the same in 2023 for equity investments. This funding will assist in enhancing our community centers and provide necessary upgrades to our sport facilities throughout the districts. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, funding has been put forward to accommodate a new Olympic-sized pool at the Truman Borden Complex. It's long overdue. And just the results we got 2 days ago, where we have Jillian Crooks and the brother and sister both setting new records in the 100-meter butterfly, backstroke. Mr. Speaker, and other people in the Caribbean are talking that Cayman swimming is about to blow up. We have to put things in place. When we have a young woman who at the age of 15 is swimming better times than the world champion was swimming at the age of 17, we have to invest, Mr. Speaker. We have to invest. Mr. Speaker, there's also the five-a-side court that was built by Scholars International in West Bay. It was a hub of activity, and a lot of good young people who are holding good jobs keep talking about it. Mr. Speaker, before becoming minister, let me say thanks to a few people. Mr. Dalton Watler, Mr. Lumsden at Public Works, Mr. Ian Parado at McAlpine, all helped me get the plans together, and the concrete companies said that they would donate, blocks would be donated. People like Cliff Smith and those block layers in West Bay said that they would come and do the work. Is a public and government doing something in the private sector. Mr. Speaker, that long missed five-a-side court is going to be back in West Bay at the end of the 8-Bush field. Scholars have been asking for their money back because they spent money on it and they've never gotten it in the last 12 years. But I will look on refunding Scholars some of their money when the thing was totally ripped apart, right across from where the Heritage Park is. But a new five-a-side court is going in, Mr. Speaker, and it's going to be one of the best in the country. There are various and necessary capital work projects proposed for our SAGCs, Mr. Speaker. In addition to the general upkeep, preservation and enhancement of our historical structures like Miss Lassie's Center and the National Museum, funds are also being allocated to ensure the safety of our treasurable artifacts and to protect them in the event of natural disaster. A special facility is therefore being proposed to allow for shared usage by all three of the SAGCs. Mr. Speaker, does this country know how much we have invested in our arts and all of our cultural and heritage stuff is sitting down there, and we have no proper place to put it? In fact, one of the places that we have some of this stuff, every time it rains on Smith Road, the place floods out. Every time. So we need to get a proper facility that can store these things, protect them from hurricanes and fire and so forth. It has to be done. We cannot spend money, invest in our culture and our heritage, and then put it down that mildew and all this stuff can affect it. It has to be done, and we cannot keep on kicking the ball down the road much longer, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you have been to the National Gallery, you'll appreciate not only the astonishing art on the inside, but the beautiful grounds on the outside that allows for hosting events, leisure activities, and even yoga. As a result, we will be supporting the installation of an irrigation system to further enhance the scenery and the setting and the road works to bridge the route between the Cayman National Cultural Foundation and the National Gallery for better ease to access for the public and for greater collaboration opportunities. As previously stated, Mr. Speaker, this is only an overview, and I am very mindful of the numerous projects and programs being proposed. However, I am equally aware and mindful of the benefits that this will have on the people of our country. We clearly see the synergies in our subject areas, and our efforts will be reaching of all ages, needs, talents, genders, and playing an integral part of daily lives, allowing us to achieve our purpose of preserving our past and strengthening our future. Let me repeat that, Mr. Speaker. Preserving our past. That's what our forefathers did, what we have there. Preserving our past. And we want to strengthen our future. We must make our young people know we have a lot to be proud of. Like the governor said to me one time at the Harkwheel, you all have a lot to be proud of. Mr. Speaker, through these efforts, we will be able to provide numerous opportunities by ultimately helping our people realize their potential in areas they may have otherwise never considered. Yes, I also have to remind the country that the Donovan Rankin Field, the upgrades, including bathrooms and all that stuff, has been put into the budget, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we are working in conjunction with a lot of people. A perfect example, we are bringing back the air show. Mr. Speaker, next year is the Queen's celebration. We all remember the Easter Regatta, what it was on that 7 Mile beach. Mr. Speaker, the Easter Regatta, the sailboats, so they will come around and sail. The speedboats, so they will we'll organize races. And I hear that the jet skis, which the Water Sports Association, haven't found out yet, if they're the same or whatever, but the Water Sports Association will put on races as well. All of this will be done out there, like how it used to be when it was a big thing to go out on the beach. The only problem is, Mr. Speaker, I just looked behind just now and saw the Cayman compass, and it looks like the planning of the past hasn't given us much beach to go carry baby sit down on. But anyhow, Mr. Speaker, we are trying to bring us together. Mr. Speaker, we are trying to highlight all of the talent we have. We must promote them. We must assist them. And talking to the various artists, different things they say. Thanks for coming and talking to us. Thanks for listening to us. This is what we wanted. Someone to hear our concerns. And the ministry is listening. It is hearing. And what I am so proud of, Mr. Speaker, is that when I've taken something to caucus, we have a caucus that seems to care, that seems to genuinely want to see our culture and our heritage highlighted. Mr. Speaker, I could talk on those four all day, but I have another ministry, Home Affairs. The sad thing is, Mr. Speaker, none of these bring in any money to the country. But, Mr. Speaker, they keep us safe. Mr. Speaker, I can assure you and this honorable House that having ministerial responsibility for youth, sports, culture, and heritage is enough to fill any Caymanian's heart with the deepest sense of national pride that anybody could imagine. That is, in fact, the humbling experience which I am currently living. And so then, Mr. Speaker, you can appreciate why I consider myself doubly blessed to also serve the people of this island as Minister of Home Affairs. I thank the Premier very often, even though there's one department that keeps me up at night. I thank the Premier for seeing it in me to give me this ministry as well. You see, Mr. Speaker, that very same sense of national pride is evoked in me each time I reflect and appreciate that the road to prosperity under this administration is in fact paved with a combination of policy, investment, and innovation, and undeniably two fundamental ingredients in the hot mix are security and public safety. Mr. Speaker, I now wish to focus my attention on the area of Home Affairs. The value of the ministry, Mr. Speaker, cannot be overstated. The Ministry of Home Affairs has responsibility for key departments that provide for public safety, national security, and well-being of the community through effective emergency communications, the detention and rehabilitation of offenders, fire and rescue services, provision of disaster response and humanitarian relief, and development of youth leaders through a disciplined military structure linked to our uniformed services. The departments administered by the Ministry of Home Affairs are as follows. Department of Public Safety and Communication. Mr. Speaker, that's 911. That's the CCTVs and all that type of stuff. The Cayman Islands Fire Service, Cayman Islands Prison Service, Department of Community Rehabilitation, Cayman Islands Regiment, and the Cayman Islands Cadet Corps. Mr. Speaker, as a part of the initial decisions taken by this PAC government, the Ministry of Home Affairs was established as a ministry separate from any other. This was absolutely the right move, as it will allow for a renewed sense of focus and alignment specific to matters of security and public safety. The ministry itself deals primarily with policy development, research, and advice, as well as issues coordination, strategic development, project management, and program delivery. Of course, as you might expect, the sustained key risk to the ministry is the prevalence of COVID-19 and its transmission across our communities. This pandemic represents a significant threat to our essential services with potential to disrupt our emergency response capability. This has incredible implications for our security and public safety, as one would imagine. In tandem with the wider public service, the Ministry of Home Affairs is continuing to implement robust and dynamic operational responses, including the introduction of lateral flow tests, public health reporting protocols, and HR policies such as remote working to reduce face-to-face interaction in our workplaces. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, our firefighters cannot take someone out of a fire by remote. Mr. Speaker, the prison cannot keep our prisoners safe by remote. This has to be done hands-on. Somebody has to do it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our regiment, the work that they have done in their short time, evacuate flood victims. And I will say this, in a short time, they have become very useful, and I'm happy to see that they've taken some of the load, because who used to do a lot of their stuff, and no one ever gave them recognition, was the fire service. No one ever gave the fire service their due. But a lot of stuff that the regiment is doing, the fire service was doing before. Mr. Speaker, the challenges are real. Mr. Speaker, the challenges are not only us, there are other frontline workers. You have border control. They have the frontline problem just like we do. You can't do that stuff by remote. Mr. Speaker, the ministry has remained closely involved in the work of the National Emergency Operations Center, the Program Board, and other aspects related to the continuity of national security operations. And they could not have given me a better chief officer for this ministry than Mr. Michael E. Banks. Calm. Always an even keel, never up, never down. And Mr. Speaker, this ministry, even I did not realize how deep it was until I got there. It is accepted that we are in challenging times. The important thing to recognize, however, is that we are all in this pandemic crisis together. Mr. Speaker, the COVID-19 pandemic presents unprecedented difficulties for people all around the world, as well for their governments. For entities such as Home Affairs, whose work is essential to the public, these challenges are heightened and compounded, professionally and personally. The implications for how life-saving work can be conducted in an operationally safe manner and the impact that the additional stressors can have on staff is vital to consider. Mr. Speaker, it is not lost on me at all that the pandemic has inspired new ways of working, but also increased the cost of business, and worse yet, has continued to negatively impact the mental health of our people on the front lines. People have no idea what some of our staff are going through mentally. Mr. Speaker, I can safely say before the last general election, my attention was in no way focused on matters of public safety, with the exception of the fire service, which, as you all know, has always been my baby, something that I've cried about, been a form working at air traffic control in the past. I knew the importance of the fire service. No plane, people don't realize this, no plane can land in this country, if the airport sector is not right with the fire service. They have to have a certain amount of vehicles, they have to have a certain amount of men, and the vehicles have to have certain capabilities, or we can't land certain planes. Mr. Speaker, people don't realize the importance of the firemen. Hurricane Ivan, when I'm having people telling me that the fire truck was coming through water, pulling them off of their roof, and they're still saying to me, how can the fire truck run with the water almost up to their door? I have yet to ask the engineers about that as well, but that's how good they were. They saved a lot of people's lives, Mr. Speaker. I'm so happy that the Heroes Day this year is about the uniformed services. And, Mr. Speaker, hopefully my firemen, our firemen, will be given the due respect that's long overdue. Mr. Speaker, like I said, before this election, I wasn't too much paying attention to emergency preparedness or national security as it is now. In only a few short months, however, I have had the privilege of truly appreciating more than ever what it really means to be on the front lines of offender supervision, intelligence-led security, multi-agency criminal justice management, and national security crisis mitigation. I'm on the front line. It is so deep. Mr. Speaker, all across the Ministry of Home Affairs, I have witnessed men and women courageously stepping forward on a daily basis to surmount challenges that literally involve life or death actions, decisions, and outcomes. These are individuals and teams, Mr. Speaker, who thrive despite significant line of duty risks, exposure to trauma, and the resulting mental health stressors. For this reason, I do not ever wish to understate the personal sacrifices made by these who serve on the front line, delivering the government's policies, especially those involved in our security and public safety services of Home Affairs. They are important. I ask the country in these hard times, pray for their guidance and their protection. Their combination of sacrifice, competence, and innovation ensures that everyone across our three islands has access to a diverse range of criminal justice and public safety services. I am compelled, therefore, to express just how truly proud I am of those same unsung heroes for their commitment to providing empathetic help and compassionate help to a wide range of the vulnerable population. Mr. Speaker, when I say vulnerable populations, I am referring to persons, for example, who are serving a prison sentence and contemplating their reintegration back into mainstream society, but who will require us to take a joined-up approach that is evidence-based and trauma-informed. I'm also referring to the vulnerabilities of those who are being supervised on a probation order of the court, but who will require us to promote a whole of society response to rehabilitation and early intervention solutions in partnership with civil society and service clubs. And Mr. Speaker, these banks that we have in this country, it's time for them to step up, because when someone goes to prison and they come out, they're starting their life, they've worked in there, they have a bank account, they cannot even get a bank account open, Mr. Speaker. And what has happened, just to tell you how, it's a cycle. Some of them have said to me, I gave somebody on the outside my money to hold. And when I came out, they spent it and had a fight, they end up back in Northwood again. And when you talk to someone about, SEMA, nope. It's not SEMA, Mr. Speaker. Now, if a prisoner is in prison for money laundering or something, yes. But if a person goes in for stabbing somebody or goes in for a little spliff, something like that has nothing to do with money. There's no reason why you can't give that person an account. That has nothing to do with the money thing. But it's these banks, there is always something in place to keep on holding us Caymanians back. It has to stop. Mr. Speaker, it has to stop. You go in, you do the crime, now you do your time. You realize you made your mistakes, and you don't want to go back and you want to start your life. They got a police record, we don't want to give them a job. We'd rather put somebody on a work permit. And we don't know what they did before they came here. But yet, we can't give our own a break. And to my people, to our people, I have to say, you all have to step up and do your part. We can talk all we want, but if you don't do your part, when we put things in place, you do your piece for us too. It's a three-way, all of us have to do it together. If those examples don't resonate, then perhaps, Mr. Speaker, I would invite those listening to recall the sense of vulnerability they experienced when suddenly and unexpectedly they needed the immediate help of the police or fire department or any of the emergency first responder agencies. Think back when you had to call the police because of something happened, somebody threatening you, threatening your family, or when you had a fire or something. Mr. Speaker, I implore us to not take for granted in those moments of desperation when we needed to be rescued or protected. We instinctively dialed those three famous numbers, 911, and knew that help was there only moments away. Again, though, to keep it that way, we will be required to adequately invest in the technology that supports a secure, functional, and reliable public safety communication platform. I'm very happy to say that the new generation of stuff is being installed. The acting Deputy Chief Officer, Gillian Lewis, who is just Director of 911, they've got 911. It's one of those departments we don't have to look over too much. Things are running there, the capabilities for the future, because you just can't think in this technology for 3 or 4 years, Mr. Speaker. You have to think 10, 12 years because technology is always moving. Everything has to be being able to interface. 911 has to interface with the police, has to interface with the fire truck. Everything has to hook somehow, Mr. Speaker. And that's the technology that's going in there to protect us and keep us safe. Mr. Speaker, I am specifically drawing your attention to the matter that is important because resilience is at the heart of this ministry, as will be evident throughout my later remarks when I speak directly to each department's operational horizons for the next 2 years. Simply put, Mr. Speaker, resilience is a central objective of our strategies, solutions, and services. When I say resilience, I'm referring to the ability of our country to recover from a national shock and to withstand disaster and significant adversity. Our resilience, therefore, describes the buffer capacity of the country to absorb and positively respond to different forms of shock, be it related to criminal justice or disaster management, border security, public health, or unemployment. Mr. Speaker, most days it feels like the ministry's portfolio is comprised of equal parts, exhilaration and exhaustion. The reason for that is because the issues before us in the security and public safety space are complex and ever-evolving. The backdrop is comprised of various threats on one hand, but countless opportunities on the other. I'm finding that this ministry is a lot like an octopus, which by necessity has the technicals into what seems like every aspect of government business. For example, our fire trucks. We have some that are now outdated because planning has gone to approve these tall buildings, and a lot of trucks was only designed for 3 and 4 floors. So all of a sudden, the fire trucks have to become different because we have to meet a 10-story building. And here we go again. It affects fire. It affects our budget. We will recognize that the intersection of security and public safety with things like education, youth development, employment, public health, sustainable development, tourism, air travel, and environmental health, just to name a few. So above all, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Home Affairs prides itself on being a valuable partner to everyone. We must not lose sight of the fact that we have before us opportunities to change people's lives and their livelihoods in the most profound and positive ways. Mr. Speaker, the value proposition for the Ministry of Home Affairs as reflected in the budget is therefore the achievement of outcomes intended to deliver resilience in ways that support the achievement of wider government objectives related to jobs, sustainable development, the well-being of Caymanians, and the overall prosperity of our people. Mr. Speaker, I want to take time here to thank the Deputy Governor, the Financial Secretary, for helping our staff, especially in this ministry. At no time, Mr. Speaker, do we want to compromise security or safety. And this, not bringing guns and bullets for a regiment was easy to say no, and we put school lunches for our children. But there are other aspects that we had to go into and look at what we could cut, what we shouldn't cut. And the Deputy Premier and the Chiefs and the Financial Secretary sat many meetings with us and showed us, if you do it this way, then next year you can do this, and I'd like to say a special thanks to those two, to the Deputy Premier and the Financial Secretary for their guidance, patience, and help. It did me so bad, Mr. Speaker, I even stabbed myself, I even drew blood to try to get something out of them, Mr. Speaker. As we quickly established already, there is a diverse range of cross-cutting interest areas for the Ministry of Home Affairs, not least of which include things like modernizing national critical infrastructure such as our prison. And Mr. Speaker, that's another thing. Hopefully before this term is over, that word prison will disappear. It will be called the Reform Center, Correction Center, or something beside the prison. Building safety into our fire stations and fleet, as well as advancing the reliability of our national public safety communications network, which I should add serves as an essential lifeline for officers in all our home affairs departments and so many others across the public service. Mr. Speaker, I'm sure we can agree that a cornerstone, perhaps even a prerequisite of a thriving economy, is safety and security coupled with the rule of law and the due process. So isn't it fair to say that security emboldens commerce? Does it not encourage consumers to engage in our marketplaces? Yes is the answer to those questions. And so it's also fair to say that security and safety builds confidence amongst investors, importers, small business owners, and to the larger employee alike. Mr. Speaker, I should make it clear, though, that in addition to our intent of leveraging the full suite of our safety and security capabilities to achieve our strategic goals, we will also not compromise when it comes to providing Caymanians with confidence that their individual rights, freedoms, and circumstances will be fully respected and protected. This is a matter of democratic decency that is grounded in human rights and will be reflected in our policies. Mr. Speaker, with your permission to continue, I will now shine light on some of the key achievements and plans as we look ahead to 2022-2023. Cayman Islands Fire Service. As this Honorable House will be fully aware, the Fire Service provides 911 emergency fire and rescue operational response across Grand Cayman, Cayman Brac, and Little Cayman. 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And Mr. Speaker, on the leap year, that extra day, we don't take it off. We're still there too, sir. There are currently 3 fire stations that serve the residents of Grand Cayman. They are located in West Bay, Georgetown, and Frank Sound. In Cayman Brac, there is 1 station, as is the case of Little Cayman. The fire service is equipped with a range of specialist personnel, trucks, boats, and technical resources, allowing the department to respond to an impressive broad range of emergencies. Additionally, as part of the country's national disaster management framework, the Fire Service is an integral component of the National Emergency Operations Center, providing emergency response capabilities jointly with partner agencies, including Hazard Management, Cayman Islands Coast Guard, the Regiment, Public Works, and so many more. Mr. Speaker, if I was delivering these remarks in years gone by, I would have probably described the Fire Service as a firefighting and rescue service, and perhaps not given it a second thought. However, we are pushing a wave of modernization across our security and public safety entities, and that includes the Fire Service. Strategically, we have been evolving to an all-hazard fire rescue service. In other words, we're making it official what they used to do before. That really is our vision, an organization of firefighters prepared for every hazard, Mr. Speaker. Herein lies an example of a resilience outcome for these islands. Mr. Speaker, we will not ignore that the process of modernization and evolution has naturally created additional operational responsibilities for which the Fire Service must rise to meet. As such, we will continue to build preparedness within the organization to support every level of hazard response, whether it happens on an airfield, in a building or a vehicle, or on the water, or whether it involves hazardous material, confined space, building collapse, fire extinguishment, medical, dive rescue, search and rescue, extraction, code enforcement, or arson investigation. As such, Mr. Speaker, we will do two very important things over the next 2 years as it concerns the Fire Service. We will invest in technical, management, and leadership training within a standards-based competency framework, right-sized to meet the modernization needs of the Cayman Islands Fire Service. 2, invest in equipment, trucks, vessels, and other technologies that support safe systems of work across the spectrum of community hazard risks. And 3, build strategic partnerships to support modernization and all hazards capability. In respect of building and maintaining our capabilities to deliver emergency fire rescue services, we will prioritize strategic capital investments with a view to maintain industry standards, effectively protect property, and save lives without compromising the safety of firefighters. Delivering the possibilities of a modern fire rescue service requires that we proudly invest in personal protective equipment, technical tools, fleet, and other resources that not only facilitate rescues, but also protect our firefighters as they put their lives on the line for us. Mr. Speaker, as we continue modernizing our fire service, our focus will remain on professionalism of the service, as well as improving response times, ensuring gender equity among staff, protecting the deterioration of critical assets, and ensuring competence and compliance with firefighting and rescue standards across our domestic, airroom, training, and investigation services. Mr. Speaker, and another thing, I have promised a lot of firemen, past and present, that I would do my best to eliminate the culture of cronyism and nepotism and bullyism that has crept in to our fire service. And we're on our way to doing that, Mr. Speaker. Next, Mr. Speaker, the Cayman Islands Regiment. Mr. Speaker, I will now provide this Honorable House with a few brief remarks in relation to the regiment. The regiment is a new entity under the Ministry of Home Affairs whose purpose is to provide disaster relief and security within the Cayman Islands and the wider Caribbean region. Mr. Speaker, in a very short period of time, the regiment has demonstrated significant value to our communities as the newest component of our National Disaster Management Framework. Most notably, the regiment has undertaken a program of developing a fit-for-purpose fleet and for acquiring key operational equipment to support its disaster response and humanitarian aid remit, with a view to increase the regiment's readiness in areas of disaster relief efforts. The regiment has acquired 7 fully serviced ex-military vehicles and 2 lightweight water purification systems. The expanded fleet and additional equipment will continue strengthening our disaster preparedness and rapid operational deployment response capabilities. Mr. Speaker, I voted against this, against the regiment, and now it's in my lap. And Mr. Speaker, even though I saw they wanted 150, the budget constraints do not allow us, but let's say the 75 we have, I'm going to make sure they're the best 75. And what the public was concerned about it being an army, it is not. Forget that. I'm making sure of that part. But, Mr. Speaker, the work they're doing, just our field station for COVID, to put that hospital together, they said would have taken 2 or 3 weeks. The regiment had it already completed in almost a week. Mr. Speaker, during that so-called storm that was really a hurricane the other day called Grace, they also came in very useful. They were everywhere, helping everyone. Mr. Speaker, I can tell the country, put your minds at ease, it is not an army. It is not an army. But it will evolve, Mr. Speaker, into a lot of things. But the discipline that it brings to a lot of people who are doing this part-time, the country is slowly getting in a better place. As such, the regiment must continue to pursue professional development initiatives that enhance military education through traditional and non-traditional learning opportunities. For this reason, training will remain a key focus of the regiment over the next 2 years as we seek to increase leadership and professional growth amongst all ranks of the organization. And Mr. Speaker, I can tell the country, once again, this will not be a retirement ground for a bunch of Englishmen coming over here and parking themselves in it. We will promote and grow our own. That is something, I said it, Caymanians first, Caymanians second, and Caymanians third. Mr. Speaker, that ain't changing because I'm a minister now. It's gotten worse. Mr. Speaker, it should be highlighted that the regiment has received valuable support through partnership with the UK Royal Military Academy, and the organization will continue to leverage such relationships to deliver command and leadership training to junior officers, junior non-commissioned officers, and potential junior non-commissioned officers through the partnership. I was most pleased to see two command officer cadets successfully complete the commissioning course at the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst, which led to their commissions as second lieutenants. Along the same lines, there's also a robust internal leadership and development framework of local workshops hosted by the regiment, which has resulted in the promotion of 16 troopers. And it'd be remiss of me. Mr. Speaker, the governor, you heard other people speak of the governor. There was nobody more critical of him than me. Make me tell you, after the thing that we went through here, and Mr. Speaker, I watched a man come to my cultural events. I watch him sit and listen carefully. I see him read. I sit and had conversations concerning certain things in the regiment that was off the record. He came back and said to me, yes, what you did express was there. That was the first thing I said, okay. I'm going to listen to Mr. Samuel Rose, the cabinet secretary, who said, the governor's a good man, give him a chance. Mr. Speaker, the regiment, the governor understands our feelings. He understands the public feelings, how the public feels about it. Some other people don't, but he does. And I want to take my hat off to a man who I see trying to understand our cultural our culture, trying to understand what we grew up believing in, and working with us. And I want to say to Governor Roper, thank you, especially in the regiment. He has helped me a lot with this, where when I did not understand things, to sit down and to talk through it. He and Mike have been a blessing, and I want to say thank you to the governor, especially, for his help and guidance in these things. He is not a bad fellow. The only thing we have left to do, we want to take him to Rockets for a session. But Rockets no open no more. Mr. Speaker, going forward, the regiment will continue to build its operational capacity and leadership resources. It is imperative that efforts are focused upon providing training and development throughout the organization. For this reason, we are engaging with our UK partner to facilitate training by a special UK military training team next summer. At the same time, the organization's continued growth will be supported by the acquisition of important fleet and equipment. These resources will be prioritized in collaboration with our partners and in alignment with national risk assessment and mitigation plans. Mr. Speaker, the strategic priorities of the regiment are interlinked and clearly aligned with achieving the broad outcome in respect of providing solutions to improve the well-being of our people so they can achieve their full potential. The primary mission of the regiment will be disaster preparedness and delivery of humanitarian aid and relief services in tandem with the National Emergency Operations Center and other stakeholders and partner groups. In this context, the regiment will promote and support opportunities for multi-agency and joint task force services which have proven essential in the delivery of resilience outcomes. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to pause and recognize the important role of His Excellency the Governor, which I just did just now, in the function of the regiment. Thank you very much. Department of Public Safety, Communications. Mr. Speaker, I will now comment briefly in respect to the Department of Public Safety. The Department of Public Safety Communications is a department we will seldom see in the spotlight. However, I can assure you, Mr. Speaker, that the organization is central to our ability to save lives, protect property, and enhance public safety. At the core of the department is a remit to deliver a wide range of critical emergency communication services, surveillance capabilities, and electronic offender monitoring services. The department also receives and processes emergency and non-emergency calls for service, dispatching the appropriate emergency resources as circumstances require on a 24/7, 365 basis. Mr. Speaker, the department also manages the Electronic Monitoring Center, which delivers secure electronic monitoring service that enable our criminal justice partners to manage the risk of offenders. On the topic of the national CCTV programs, I am pleased to say that the department has finalized a proposal for the implementation of Phase 2 of the national CCTV program. This will encompass 20 camera locations in the sister islands. Full implementation is anticipated in the first quarter of next year. This upcoming work will build on recent achievements whereby a number of new camera locations were installed across Grand Cayman. Also at the Haida Barcas, Mr. Speaker, they're putting up the Haida Barcas for us. So we should now start to catch those people who are dumping stuff up there. Mr. Speaker, the department will continue with the relocation of the new 300-foot National Public Safety Communications Radio Tower in the Northwood area. Mr. Speaker, the department proudly operates the next-gen 911 capability, and over the next 2 years, we will continue giving the highest priority to the protection of our public safety answer points. Mr. Speaker, I mentioned innovation earlier and will quickly mention a great example. Department of Public Safety is a key part of a multi-agency task force exploring the use of non-intrusive personal medical devices for elderly persons. The initiative is sponsored by the Older Persons Council and seeks to mitigate certain vulnerabilities experienced by elderly persons while helping to safely facilitate independent living experience. The goal is to leverage emerging technologies to enable elderly people to benefit from rapid alert notifications to a responsible person or entity if they require urgent assistance, or a person at home by themselves, something happened, just press a simple button that's hanging around their neck, and we know they got a problem, we're there for them if they can't talk. This is what's in plan as well to help our older generations, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, additional technological advances are planned in relation to computer-aided dispatch software and hardware. The objective is to pursue faster emergency responses and with greater information available to the responders. Mr. Speaker, these upgrades include the delivery of wireless technology into public safety vehicles, which will allow for public safety and criminal justice software to be assessed in the field. DPSC also intends to upgrade the uninterrupted power supplies that support the continuity of electric power for the computer-aided dispatch software and hardware in the event of major electronic utility failure. And we've also already just approved for the bunker in the back to be replaced as well, Mr. Speaker. Department of Community Rehabilitation. Mr. Speaker, the Department of Community Rehabilitation is mandated by the courts and conditional release boards to provide thorough reports, risk assessment, intervention programs, and quality supervision and rehabilitation of offenders in the community and institution. DCR works in partnership with various agencies to rehabilitate offenders, reduce reoffending, protect the public, and provide victim support services. I'm pleased to highlight a few achievements on the back of which we will build our plans over the next 2 years. Notably, there have been substantial advancement in professional development. For example, all probation officers have been fully trained in the changes supervision strategy. This enhanced methods of working with offenders to reduce reoffending is critical as the department maintains over 700 cases of supervision in the community monthly and provides service to almost 200 victims per month. Mr. Speaker, although DCR is a relatively small department that may somewhat be overlooked, it is mighty in its capacity to impact change and improve security, public safety, and community well-being. The department works directly with every criminal justice entity and most human service agencies across all 3 islands, thus making it a hub for key information on offenders and central to the criminal justice system. It is said to be the hands and feet of the court in many respects and is heavily relied upon to work with offenders considered unmanageable for many other agencies. Mr. Speaker, I have come to appreciate that the more effective DCR and our criminal justice system is at managing offenders from a risk-informed position, then the safer and more secure our jurisdiction will be. However, Mr. Speaker, there must be a system in place to support a collaborative approach, such as an offender management framework, an integrated system alongside quality assurance and platforms for the exchange and analysis of intelligence. At a time when firearm violence has increased and there are legitimate concerns about gang violence, the department is geared up to advance its standing as a key partner to the law enforcement and intelligence community with strategic priorities intrinsic to addressing crime. Mr. Speaker, the next one I know is dear to you, the Cayman Cadet Corps. Mr. Speaker, the Cadet Corps is going to be a major player going forward. When it was designed, if I remember correctly, it was designed for 2 things: to get young people to learn discipline, and number 2, to feed the police force. It was specifically said the police force. Well, Mr. Speaker, sad to say, the police force has not been good with us. And I found out it's not the commissioner. It's somebody below him. I'm not naming and shaming yet, but the board now has been put in place. And the deputy chair of the board is the head of training at the police service, Mr. Adrian Seals. Discipline, career policeman. We have people on the board now who we have education. Deputy Chief Officer, Ms. Linus Monteith. So we are going to go all out with the Cadet Corps, because what we've seen is the Cadet Corps mainly by those people who have mixed heritage. A lot of us have not jumped in there. And Mr. Speaker, what I hope to do is that when the curriculum that's being looked at and designed by the commandant will have some police, have some fire, have some Coast Guard, have some all of the armed forces, that when these young people come out of there, and if 5 people apply, let's say for example, for the fire service, and one of them has gone through the Cadet Corps, that person will have a better mark because he's gone through some of the fire service things already in the Cadet Corps. This should be a feeder for all our services. The discipline, and how I knew it was the right thing, Mr. Speaker, I happened to go on Youth Flex, and there was a young lady on Youth Flex with me who was working at the Coast Guard, which I must take my hats off of. They've just taken 5 of the Cadet Corps. They've got 5 in their ranks and services, and the commandant told me they're doing really good. But the young lady who was on the shore with me had not gone through the Cadet Corps. And the people on Youth Flex was asking her about training for the Coast Guard. She said, and I quote, "The people who went through the Cadet Corps makes it look like a piece of cake." That said it all. She says, "We had so much to learn, even as simple as the marching, to do that right. The Cadet Corps had it down pat. The people who went through the Cadet Corps. That shows me, Mr. Speaker, it plays a part. The Cadet Corps, Mr. Speaker, we will grow that, and we will make that an integral part of home affairs in this country. I must highlight at this point that the Cadet Corps is approaching its 20th anniversary, which will be marked in May of next year. As a national voluntary youth organization sponsored by the government, the Cadet Corps continues to lead the way in its quest to develop the nation's youth. On Saturday, May 4, 2002, the first cohort of recruits graduated to cadets. As we celebrate the 20th anniversary in 2022, we should take a moment to acknowledge the hundreds of young boys and girls that have benefited from the training offered by the Cadets Corps. Even a Miss Cayman went through the Cadet Corps, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the strategic priorities identified illustrate the tremendous work that the Cadet Corps has done to upskill, inspire, and adapt to changing environment. These objectives are aligned with the government broad outcome in the strategic policy statement, namely to provide solutions that improve the well-being of our people so that they can achieve their full potential, support the family system and communities, create a modern social infrastructure, create healthy communities, and create greater employment opportunities. Mr. Speaker, the Cadet Corps has been at the forefront of youth development training, and I am most proud that the cadets now form part of the Home Affairs family. We can all take pride in the Cadet Corps and the aim to continue to develop agile strategic strategies that promote the value of citizenship leadership. Mr. Speaker, the last one, the Cayman Islands Prison Service. As this Honorable House is aware, Her Majesty's Cayman Islands Prison Service serves the public by keeping individuals in custody who have been committed by the courts, while treating them with dignity and humanity and providing meaningful opportunities to address offending behavior and prepare them for re-entry into our communities. Despite a backdrop of progressively deteriorating physical facilities, a daily average population that exceeds design capacity, and a global pandemic which has contributed to significant unrest within prisons around the world, the prison services achieved a number of notable outcomes recently. Mr. Speaker, the first thing the DP has said to myself, don't come ask me for 300 million or 30 million or whatever for no prison when we got to educate and feed our young people who are hungry. Come for, ask a reasonable amount. Well, Mr. Speaker, that was just a rumor, the figure that we had heard. It wasn't that bad. But our prison has failed for the last 10 years every test from international bodies. Everything that you can think of, we failed on. And Mr. Speaker, we will be building a new section starting next year. And it's going to be a stage by stage, because that is the way the purses allow us to do it. But it's been done. Mr. Steve Barrett, who I must pay respect to, will be leaving us next week. We would like to wish him on behalf of this House the best, say thanks very much, Godspeed, and may God keep your health with you as long as possible. And also announce that Mr. Daniel Greaves has been named the prison director designate. And when Mr. Barrett said that, I was very happy to know that we now have a Caymanian back in charge of the prison again. And just like the prison director before Mr. Barrett, Neil said Mr. Greaves is more than capable. He just has to want it. And Mr. Greaves has said he feels this is the right time. So, Mr. Speaker, the country has taken a step forward in putting our own into these top posts. Mr. Speaker, the prison service has a lot of problems. For example, when we have someone with mental problems, where do we put them? At the prison. But the staff have not been trained to deal with this. Number two, there's no facilities for people with mental health. We're not supposed to put children with criminals. All these various things we're facing at the prison. And they've had to be innovative, and they've had to do a lot of adapting to a lot of things. The prison is on target to deliver well in excess for 150,000 hours of purposeful activities by the end of the year, supported by the facilitation of almost 3,000 virtual visits to keep families connected. They just signed the MOU with the University of the West Indies that prisoners can get even more education and courses before they come out. And I've also, the chief officer is looking at ways of even getting the prison officers to use this MOU with the University of the West Indies for us to get qualified as well through this system. Mr. Speaker, I would like to highlight the critical capital projects progressed this year. The outline business case for a new fit-for-purpose prison facility was completed. I am proud to confirm that this government has approved key recommendations which set the stage for us to move ahead with deliverables related to phase 1 of the plan. Mr. Speaker, this is a major capital investment which has received support from both sides of the House, demonstrating the shared understanding that this is necessary if we are to enhance the reputation of the Cayman Islands internationally while providing comprehensive and modern correctional and rehabilitation services. Our goal here, Mr. Speaker, is to mitigate the risk and enormous liabilities arising due to the current state of the prison. Frankly, Mr. Speaker, our people deserve better, and we intend to ultimately deliver more efficient operations, a more secure facility, adherence to human rights, and a love for rehabilitation to be at the heart of how the prison functions. Over the next 2 years, the Cayman Islands Prison will also focus on delivering various initiatives, some of which include mitigating public health risks, developing professional competency frameworks, and strengthening of our strategic partnerships. Mr. Speaker, finally, I must mention that we must move forward over the next 2 years. Our strategic partnerships across the private sector, public service, and civil society will provide to be integral to the prison service. Continuing to pursue and strengthen these synergies is therefore a priority. These relationships allow for intelligence sharing, especially in respect to protect against the danger of organized crime and gang activities within the prison, prioritizing child safeguarding, shielding victims and the public from criminality. These relationships also allow for partner agencies to provide services that are complementary to our goal of rehabilitation and reintegration for people in prison and those transitioning out of prison. Mr. Speaker, before I close, I would like to personally recognize once again Mr. Steve Barrett and wish him well for his invaluable contribution. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I am most grateful for your indulgence to allow me to speak here today. I have presented an overview of strategic issues and a high-level roadmap for the next 2 years with respect to the operations of the Ministry of Home Affairs. As a government, we have taken the important step of deciding what is truly important based on the input of the Caymanian people. We will now focus resources and actions on those objectives with certainty and precision, with the understanding that good strategies require difficult decisions. Mr. Speaker, you can expect that this ministry will be deliberate in the coordination of actions so as to address specific challenges based on priorities of the government. Ultimately, Mr. Speaker, the ministry looks forward to deploying a coherent mix of policy and action designed to surmount a number of high-stake challenges in the security and public safety arena. Across Home Affairs, our strategic priorities will intersect with a number of the important broad outcomes. Notably, our contributions to safer communities, for example, will be evident through work that includes expanding the national CCTV program, enhancing 911 and communication systems, strengthening mental health services in prisons, leveraging the offender management framework, and building a modern, fit-for-purpose prison. Mr. Speaker, you have also heard throughout my remarks that built into the strategic development of the ministry is a mission to increase the value placed on training, development, and the creation of opportunities for Caymanians within our workforce. A few examples include the overarching strategic development of partnerships between the Cadet Corps and the various uniformed services and public safety agencies to create pathways through curriculum design that facilitate not only youth leadership but also employment prospects. Additionally, the comprehensive people's strategy by the prison professionalization plans for the regiment and the fire service and plans for both the prison and DCR to improve employability for offenders all evidence this strategic intent. I'm also pleased to say that we will pursue various projects and procurement with the view to support broad outcomes related to climate change and resilience and sustainable development. This will be reflected in deliberate consideration of our options when procuring goods and services. This will be evidenced by the upcoming acquisition of a full electric fan design for prison transportation. Mr. Speaker and fellow members of Parliament, I have presented an overview of plans for the Ministry of Home Affairs, as well as a brief overview of how these relate to the government desired broad outcomes. Mr. Speaker, I want to also assist across the floor something that was said yesterday. I made a simple phone call to the Cricket Association, and I must say, Mr. Speaker, some things that the member did not mention is that he was the first Caymanian to go play professional in England, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, he also did not tell the people that he was on the team, that the first time they won a match in the ICC Cup. I forgot that. Oh, that's the twin switch. And Mr. Speaker, I made a call. I remember the Cricket Association calling me to find out if Cayman Airways could fly directly to Antigua and all that stuff. So I knew they didn't go, but I didn't get into the intricacies of it. I made a call, and there are some things that the member was not appraised of by his advisors, and that's one, qualification is not based on attending. qualification is based on your junior programs. It would have cost $122,000 to get the team to Antigua because there were some people who didn't have visas, also the COVID situation. Some would have to go in, getting there almost because the flight from Jamaica to Antigua was only once a week or something like that. So everything worked out. It would be $120,000 to attend and take part. The association felt that it was better to put that into their youth programs, and that the teams that are there now were the same teams that were there when they were there. There were no new teams yet this time. But Cayman not attending this time will not affect their attendance the next trip. And that, going back to what I said earlier on, that this is one of those associations that I will be monitoring because I want to see development. Too much associations in this country got a bunch of old people who they call national team players who couldn't catch a cold at this stage in life, but they're still making the national team. And why? Because they have not developed any young people to come through. It's the modus operandi in this country. It's easy to pick somebody, they come from another country, they can't make the team in their own country, but they come here and they make the Cayman team. No, go develop our own. That's what we're going to be doing in the next 3 or 4 years. We're going to be developing big time junior programs, and junior competitions. Mr. Speaker, I hope that has given the member from Georgetown. And when you're talking about I manage the team, Mr. Speaker, just to let the House know, Mr. Speaker, the first day, as the manager, I was called in because the member across the floor roughed up somebody a little bit too much, and they called him in, and they warned him that one more infringement and he would be suspended. That's my opening bowler, Mr. Speaker. I couldn't leave him opening bowler being suspended. The next match, he did it again. And as he did it, Mr. Speaker, I rushed out on the edge of the field and started to say, Christopher, shut up, Christopher, behave. And when I took it before the team, I carried Christopher, I didn't carry David. So it was this, David did all 2 transgressions, but Christopher took the blame the second time. So at the end, both twins had been warned, Mr. Speaker. I mean, I'm their manager, and I couldn't tell the difference, so I know the people over there couldn't tell the difference, Mr. Speaker. I will be speaking to the member one-on-one because I am one of those yesterday that he said something, that I said something, yes, I'm guilty. And I didn't know that he was taking it that way, but I will see him one-on-one and apologize. But I will say this much, he represented this country with pride. And that's what I want to see all of our associations get back to. We make our own. We don't have to bring people from someplace else. Mr. Speaker, in closing, the budget that is before you today reflects not only my commitment, but also the government's and those that make up the Ministry of Home Affairs and the Ministry of Youth, Sports, Culture, and Heritage. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, please let me emphasize that for success, it will take all of us in this honorable House, the listening public, my ministries, and I to be active and committed partners in this process. I would therefore like to invite persons to put personal differences aside and focus on what is best for our people and our country. I would like to say to the member, what section you from Georgetown, what, ma'am? Georgetown's the member from Georgetown South. When I called her, she called me back to ask what she needed in her area to put in the thing. She called me back, and I appreciated that. That's working together. We intend to make this country better than what we found it, plain and simple. Mr. Speaker, thank you to my colleagues. Thank you for your backing. Thanks for your encouragement. And to the people of the Cayman Islands, continue to pray for wisdom and strength for us. Thank you all very much.
Proceedings will be suspended until 2:15. 2:15.